Hi humans, welcome back to the Drop Kennel. My name is Kate, the host of your channel. If you're returning, thank you, and welcome back. If you are new here, hello and welcome to the Drop Kennel. On this channel, we talk about all things true crime, animal edition. So we've got some tough content to cover today, as we do with every week that I do a case. And I do want everyone to keep in mind that this channel is for educational purposes only. I am not a law enforcement officer or employee. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not a forensic animal specialist. What I am is a behavior specialist for primarily canines and felines. I have 7 years. I know in my intro video I said 5.5. I apparently don't understand time. It's been 7 years. Yeah. So I've been working in sheltering for 7 years and have a good wealth of knowledge around what happens in a shelter. And a lot of times the cases that I'll be covering, shelters will be involved in some way, shape, or form. So with that said, I want to jump into today's case. This one is an active case, meaning it is open and ongoing, so we're not going to get a great sense of closure with this one, but I will be keeping tabs on it, and I'll keep you guys updated should anything happen once the trial is set. So the case today that I speak of is a dogfighting ring. Dogfighting is something I advocate against, and it's very near and dear to my heart because I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about the dogs themselves that come from dogfighting rings or are placed in homes after the trauma, or how they're even obtained for the dogfighting rings. I am going to do a separate video strictly on the history of dogfighting and what that looks like and how it's evolved. It has been going on for a very, very long time, like ancient Roman times. So we'll do that in another video. For now, I want to focus on today's 111 dogfighting survivors. This case took place in Pinellas County, and I think I'm saying it right, Pinellas County, Florida. So the case opened, or was, cracked open on July 18th of this year, so July 18th of 2024. But leading up to it, there was about a year's worth of really active investigation going on under 2 task forces in Pinellas County, Florida. So that was Operation Snowcap and Operation Pedigree. Operation Pedigree is the one that we are focusing on today, as that has to do with the dogs involved in the dogfighting ring. So within a year's time, a lot of evidence had been collected. I did read a report that there was an undercover detective within this ring of criminal activity, which props to that person. I have no idea how undercover cops and detectives do what they do. I would be terrified the entire time. So big props. Because of this, they were able to collect enough evidence in order to get a total of 20 search warrants within a day. So I didn't know what that number meant until I did a little research. That's a lot of search warrants to get in one day for one case. So that tells me that all the evidence that these officers had was pretty dang strong. So we have that year leading up to July 18th of this year, where finally about 4 different agencies were able to go in and raid this residence. Those 4 agencies were the Pinellas County Police Department, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and the St. Petersburg Police Department, and my love, the ASPCA. The ASPCA played a huge role in making sure that these animals, survivors of this dogfighting ring, were brought to a shelter of safety where they could receive everything they needed in order to start recovering. With that said, on July 18th, the ASPCA and other agencies went in to this residence where they found 111 dogs living in absolute horror and deplorable conditions. By deplorable, I mean crates, small crates, stacked on top of one another, full of urine and feces, Some didn't even have water bowls, some didn't even have food bowls. So they were being denied a lot of basic rights and basic needs as animals, or as creatures in general. Within this crime, when the agencies and the ASPCA went into the facility to rescue the dogs, they found a number of dogfighting paraphernalia, which we now, through like forensics, know that when you find these things, you can assume that chances are there's a dogfighting ring. So in this case, what they found was treadmills. So they will have treadmills that the dogs use to keep the champions fit and in shape. They had kennels stacked on top of each other where the dogs were housed. They also had breeding boxes, and it looks, it gives me water mouth just talking about it. It's gross. It was these sort of like man-made metal contraptions that holds the female in place. They were able to remove these animals and bring them to a safe place. Within this raid on July 18th, they were automatically able to arrest 23 people that were involved in the totality of the crime. I will touch a little bit on what that was. That was a huge bust. So trafficking, I think there was a mention of human trafficking as well, which is awful. And then the dog fighting and the dog trafficking for fighting. Of those 23 people, so far 6 people have been charged, like fully charged, with the following crimes. And that is animal baiting, dog fighting, and conspiracy to gamble via dog fighting. So we've got 6 people charged so far. I'm gonna pop up this screen grab of some mugshots of some of those people who were charged through Operation Pedigree. So if you do have a sensitivity of looking at mugshots, I would look away now. So here they are. I wanted to get their faces and names out there so people know what these people were doing. This is what we're looking at. These are the faces of the people who put 111 dogs through insurmountable and unnecessary torture. So, as of right now, there is not a trial date set that I've been able to find. The bulk, obviously, of the crimes that are going to be tried are all related crimes. There were pounds upon pounds of illegal substances found on the property, as well as weapons and a good amount of cold hard cash. What we find in dogfighting rings is they're oftentimes connected to other higher class felonies. With that said, you know, if we move on now to what the charges are going to look like, my fear around busts like this is always that between the prosecution and the defense, there's going to be some sort of a plea deal where if you plead guilty to the larger charge, the lesser charge will be dropped or not charged to the max penalty. Can you take a guess what the lesser charge is in this case? It's the animal cruelty charges, so the animal baiting, the dog fighting, and the conspiracy to gamble via dog fighting. Those are going to be the lesser charges. I sincerely hope that this is the case where everything is seen through an equal lens, and I don't mean equal like there's a weight between the charges, because that's very serious, and the dog fighting ring charges. I'm just hoping that the dog fighting charges are not pushed aside in order to get the max penalty and plea of guilty for the perpetrators. I think all that does is just reset this cycle of, okay, the next case will be harsher on the animal aspect, or someone else will deal with it at some later point. That's my fear, and I really hope that fear does not materialize. I hope this is the case that makes it very clear that dogfighting and animal cruelty will not be tolerated in the state of Florida. Really hope so. Fingers crossed, everybody. But what I can tell you is that even though it was busted open on July 18th, The crime was going on for at least a year, because if they had Operation Pedigree starting about a year ago in August of last year, 2023, we can then probably draw a safe conclusion that the dogfighting ring itself had actually been going on way earlier than the 1 year, which means these dogs were put through, let's put a number on it, let's say 5. 4 to 5 years. Again, that's my opinion. I'm just speculating. That is not fact. I am assuming that this size of a dogfighting ring, the duration of it would be quite lengthy. With that said, let's move on to what the max charge is in the state of Florida for a third-degree felony. A third-degree felony is where these animal cruelty charges are falling under, which means the max penalty that these criminals can get just with the animal baiting, dog fighting ring, and the conspiracy to gamble is going to be 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. So if we then go back to my assumption or my speculation that let's just pretend or say that these dogs had been going through, and not even just these 111 dogs, probably multiple other dogs who hadn't survived, had been going through this dog fighting operation for 5 years, we can guess. The max punishment certainly does not fit the crime to me. I think the fact if they get any punishment, I will certainly be happy. Because it's deserved and it would be justice. I just really hope it's the max. And I really hope that there isn't a plea deal in the works in order to drop these charges to get a lesser sentence for pleading guilty to the charges. But we've seen it happen before, so who knows? So those charges are pretty meek. So let's take a quick look at the legal system in place here for dogfighting. It is illegal on a federal level, so all 50 states, including Puerto Rico, DC, and the US Virgin Islands, illegal. Each state is able to decide and vote on what those statutes, punishments, and charges can be. They're also able to decide what degree of felony it is, so whether it's a third-degree felony or a class felony, if it's a class A, B, C, D. It varies per state. So we're focused on the state of Florida with this case, and like I said, the max charge that they can get is 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. I also want to say that there's an excellent chance that the people running the dogfighting ring made way more than $5,000 in their total operation. Whether they were trading substances to gain access to the dog fighting or paying money in general. Typically it's about anywhere from a $200 to a $2,000 entry fee depending on where you're at. This case also trafficked these dogs. So these dogs were trafficked within 4 counties, not just Pinellas County, but between 4 other ones as well as one over the border in Georgia. So I don't know what that means on the federal level for crossing state lines with this type of case. I will look into it and get back to you. I think this just comes back to our conversation that we had last week where there needs to be a little bit more of an iron fist when it comes to what you can charge people who are committing crimes against animals with, especially in the dogfighting ring where they are profiting, where these criminals are profiting off of their suffering. I do want to speak to what terrors and torture bait dogs and fighting dogs go through. I will let you know this is sensitive and disgusting and very upsetting, so graphic conversation coming up here right now. If you want to hit mute, you are more than welcome to. I'm going to flash an ear emoji right here. Once that ear pops up, that means we are talking about something very uncomfortable. So if you want to hit mute, you can. And then I'll pop the ear emoji back up once we're done with that piece of this conversation. So let's go ahead and get into it. When people find a bait dog, doesn't necessarily matter if it's spayed or neutered. What they're looking for are smaller, more submissive dogs. If that dog can't be to the submissive nature that they're looking for, they, meaning the humans who are organizing this, what they do to the bait animals is beyond torture. They're removing instinct from these animals in order to protect themselves, and what that looks like is the breaking or removal of teeth, and no, they do not do so under anesthesia. They will either tape their mouths closed if they don't remove the teeth, and let them then just be annihilated by these dogs that they have trained to fight. And the way to train a fight dog is by trigger stacking it and keeping it antisocial. So keeping it in that kennel far away from other animals so that when they do see it, they are so over-aroused, they don't know what to do with themselves. And then on top of that, they're being trained to simply funnel all that arousal into fight instead of flight. Once the bait dogs have served their purpose to these people, they're typically discarded. And discarded could mean a number of things. They could be inhumanely euthanized, or they could be left in their kennels simply to suffer with their injuries and slow, painful. The champions or the fighter dogs are typically, if they win, rewarded and treated like okay-ish by the humans, meaning they will get some affection. They'll probably get a big old steak, all while their human rolls around in piles of cash like greedy POSs. If the champion or if the losing dog in the fight, we'll say, so the losing dog in the fight, depending on the amount of losses that they've already collected, will also be discarded. Oftentimes, they will be beaten or left to tend to their wounds and injuries. That's, I know, very upfront and very graphic and very upsetting, but it is the truth. And that truth needs to be talked about because these animals lose their voice. I'm going to go ahead and pop the ear back up. I can't talk about that piece anymore. It's upsetting. So ears back up. You can unmute now. We will talk a little bit more about what happens to these animals once they leave their hellhole. So what happens next? What happens to these 111 survivors? They were rescued from their facility, from the horrors in which they lived, from the dogfighting ring by the ASPCA, and I believe a couple animal control agencies within the county. And they are going to be taken, or had been taken, to probably a few different shelters and animal crime rehabilitation centers, which are set up like shelters. So these animals are more than likely and hopefully going to have their own large kennels, fresh food and water, blankets, toys, and as much human affection as they are willing to accept and facilitate. And they will await the trial case as well. They are still considered evidence for the trial. So I'm not sure how Florida state law works around how to hold these animals until the trial date is set. I know where I'm from and in my shelter, any animal involved in a cruelty case, if that owner of the animal did not willingly relinquish or surrender the pet or pets to us, that person still had ownership, and we were merely a holding facility and care facility for the animal until the trial came to date. More often than not, a judge in the trial will then say, this is a court order. I am ordering you by law to relinquish this pet or pets to the care of said holding facility and shelter. That is when these dogs are able to go through the entire process to get adopted into brand new homes where they will hopefully be loved and spoiled beyond imagination. The other thing that happens right out of the gate, I mean immediately, these animals are taken to the holding facilities, shelters, etc., and they're immediately seen by a veterinary team. That is the very first thing that happens upon intake. So these animals get their intake, they're going to get vaccinated, get up to date on all of that, they will be dewormed, and then they will see the vet team who will do more of an exploratory exam, not internally, but just external exam of what injuries we're looking at and what they're going to need for medical intervention and for healing. Then they're going to be seen by a behavioral team. The behavioral team are going to go in and start to collect data on how quickly these dogs can recover now that they're in a new environment. The coolest thing I think about dog fighting dogs is the majority of them, once they're out of the fighting environment, they're quite lovely. The majority of them are quite human social. One of the sheriffs or deputies in the press release about this case did say that he did hear from some behavior team members that were observing the dogs that they're all quite friendly. So human social, human friendly. So these dogs are going to be seen by medical professionals and they're going to be seen by behavioral professionals, and they will await their next steps in a shelter setting. If there are enough foster families around whatever shelter they're being held at, and as long as there is legal go-ahead from either the judge of this case or animal control that's involved within this county, they will be able to go to long-term foster, which is going to be the absolute best place for them to recover. So once the trial is complete, sentencing is done, there may or may not be an order from the judge to relinquish the animals, depending on what happens between now and then. More often than not, the people who are charged and do serve time will also have an additional amount of time once they're on parole and out that they will not be able to own animals for a certain period of time. Let's hope in this case that these people have a full moratorium placed on them. You cannot ever own an animal again, and they should have some sort of a protection restriction of you shouldn't even be within 100 feet of an animal. Who knows if that will happen? That would be a high hope, but that's what we're looking at. So this was to highlight those 111 survivors of a horrific crime that, like I said, spanned 4 counties and hopped over to Georgia. I've got to say just a big thank you to all of the agencies who rescued these animals from such horrific treatment, and now these animals, these dogs, will have more autonomy than they've ever had in their lives probably, and that's pretty spectacular. So I wish all of these pups a very speedy recovery, and next week we'll talk about a completely different case, and I will have this dogfighting, dark history of dogfighting video in the works. We'll see how long it takes me, because this is a really tough topic for me to talk about, so I can only imagine it's just as tough, if not tougher, for you to hear about it. I appreciate you guys sitting in on this one. I know it's just frightening, and it's awful, and it just doesn't make any sense. So I think the less we understand about crimes like this, the more we have to talk about it, the more we have to uncover, and the more we have to advocate for laws to prevent this. How do we prevent? I don't have the solution quite yet, but God willing, am I ever thinking about it all the time. I'd love to see what some of your thoughts are on what a solution could be. Keep it nice though, keep it compassionate. I'm not talking about stringing people up by their feet and dragging them by cars or by steed. I want real time, real thought. How do we prevent? How do we prevent this? I can't decide if Delilah wants to say, yeah, she does. Come here, little one. You got it, old lady? All right, Delilah's joining us for the sign-off here. Say bye, everyone. Subscribe. Thanks for watching. Don't be mean to animals. I'm pretty sure that's what she's saying. See, that's what she's saying. All right, you guys, that is today's case. I hope you learned something today about dogfighting and just how important it is to really try and prevent these types of large dogfighting rings from happening. And again, as a very nice, gentle reminder, just because we humans, who are animals too, have a more unique cognitive ability to function, does not give us entitlement to other animals, including ourselves. Bye.